Hello and welcome to the C3 Method Patreon Weekly Q&A with your host Robert Polenic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. There you go. I'm starting to get this a little bit more down pat so I can remember this intro. Today's video is the weekly Q&A for the week of April 28th, and all the questions we're going to cover come from our Patreon members. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon member, you can go to patreon.com/C3 Method, and it's 3 spelled out THREE, so CTHREE Method. And that would be a great way to find us. You can also find us on our website, which is c3method.com, and we have a link in the top right for the Patreon page as well. As a member of Patreon, you get to submit questions for the weekly Q&A, and I do answer every single person's question directly in the Q&A, or I'll send them a direct message through the Patreon system. If it's a question that maybe doesn't lend itself well to the weekly Q&A, I'll still make sure you get your answers. So you're going to get a one-on-one answer from me, whether it's in the video or direct. And then also we have monthly training programs, and they focus on a range of topics. I'm going to be updating this upcoming week some new programs, but we cover fat loss and muscle shaping, which is kind of one goal, functional athleticism, muscle growth, strength. Olympic lifting is actually one that was requested, so I've added that in as well. The goal will be to create programs that people can choose from, see which ones people like the most, update those the most often, and kind of develop that system. One of the things I'm kicking around doing is maybe writing out a how to create your own workout template for each of the goals. So that way you can plug in exercises you like, you can modify the structure a bit, maybe you can add intensity techniques like drop sets and rest pause and other things. My intention basically with the training part is to provide content that gets you started, and then you can use the Q&A to ask personalization questions. So the Patreon is $25 a month. It's cheaper than our one-on-one coaching because I'm not writing the program specifically for you, which is what I do with our one-on-one clients. But I still want you to have some personalization ability within that programming if you would like. Some people, they want to just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I want to have those programs. And then others want to learn a little bit along the way, and I want to be able to have that as an option as well. And then we're also including nutrition education. We have a video on how to create your own nutrition program. You can then ask any questions you want in the Q&A to personalize that. And then I'm going to be continuing to post more nutrition education content. So the idea of the Patreon service is to just give you a place for $25 a month. You can talk to a trainer and nutritionist at any time. You can get good programming information. You can learn how to personalize it if you want to. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need to know, nutrition and training wise. That's the hope and the intent of the Patreon service. So the more people that join, the more people that participate in feedback and doing these questions, the more that helps. So I appreciate those who have already joined. It's fun and exciting to already be interacting with people. So I really appreciate it. I really enjoy it. So thank you for that. Okay, let's get into this week's questions. First question. I've never understood this. If I eat 3,000 calories of healthy food, such as Greek yogurt, fruit, chicken, fish, or 3,000 calories of less healthy food, like sweet treats and burgers, is the result the same? Can I eat far higher daily calories if the food is healthy? When we look at weight manipulation, so if you're considering simply managing how much you weigh, 3,000 calories is 3,000 calories, whether it comes from pizza and ice cream or whether it comes from, Greek yogurt, chicken, rice, vegetables, all the healthy stuff. Essentially, what we're looking at when we think of calories, it's energy. When we think about putting fuel in our car, I don't know all the terminology, but stick with me. I think I'm going to get the analogy close enough. There's different percentages or numbers. There's like the 85, the 87, the 89, then the 90 something, which is premium. There's gasoline versus diesel fuel. There's a whole bunch of fuels that can help our car run. Some of the fuels will help it run better than others. And if you put like diesel in a gasoline car, you're not going to have a good day. It won't run very well at all. But the idea is we have fuel, differing qualities or differing grades of fuel that will make our vehicle run. So if you think of just the gasoline itself, there was those different numbers that you can choose from. Some are premium, some are not premium, but essentially they're all going to make the car run. If you put in the quote unquote the wrong fuel, it might stress the system and the system dies or it malfunctions or something goes wrong sooner than if you were to put in the right fuel. Essentially, when we look at calories, it's the same. Is if I put in the best fuel, my machine is going to run, it's going to run optimally, it's going to run better. I'm going to have better daily energy, better digestion quality, better performance. I'm just going to feel better throughout the day. Whereas if I put in the equal amount of energy via calories from crappy food or quote unquote bad foods, I'm still going to be able to use that as energy. I'm still going to be able to use that to operate my system, operate my body. However, I might have like highs and lows in energy. I might have digestion stress. Maybe I have to run to the bathroom. Maybe I feel bloated and gassy all day. It's the quality of the experience that will be different when the fuel sources are different. When we think about quote unquote healthy foods versus quote unquote unhealthy foods, energy is still energy. So if I consume 3,000 calories and I only use 2,000 of them, I have a 1,000 calorie excess. That is going to in part go towards body fat, and then in part we just kind of get rid of it. Whether I have that excess from healthy food or whether I have it from unhealthy food, it's still an excess. It's still going to cause body weight management issues, and it's still going to cause some health problems. So a lot of the blood marker health problems we have come from an excess or an extreme deficit of food, but that's usually not the problem. It's usually excess. So we want to make sure that the amount of fuel we put in, we're using about that same amount. If we want to lose some body fat, we're going to be in a little bit of a deficit. If we want to build some muscle, we want to be in a little bit of a surplus to fuel that process. But that's essentially what calories are. It's just fuel. And then the quality of the calories determines how you feel. The quality of the calories and the distribution amongst carbs, fats, and protein is going to also determine our body composition. If I have sufficient amount of protein in my diet, I will have good muscle mass and I would feel leaner at a specific weight. So if I weighed, say, 185 pounds and I had good protein amount in my diet, then I would feel lean and muscular at 185 pounds. If I had the same amount of calories, but I had really low protein, really high carbohydrates, really high sodium, then I'm going to feel very watery, very bloated, very soft and mushy at 185 pounds. I'll still weigh 185. I just won't feel as good. I won't look as good. My body composition, my muscle mass to fat ratio won't be as good. So the calorie count of our food is just fuel. It's what our body can use to fuel us throughout the day. The quality of the food impacts how we feel throughout the day and how we look, the body composition effect we have at that weight. So if we eat healthy food, it doesn't mean you get to eat more of it and not get fat. You can still gain body fat by excessively eating quote unquote healthy food. If you eat more calories than your body needs, some of that excess will be transferred to body fat. And that's regardless of the healthiness of the foods. So hopefully that was helpful to answer that question. I like those kind of questions because when I first started all this stuff, I was 15 years old. There was no internet, and I was just taking big fat guesses, talking to a lot of people, and it was really hard to cipher out this type of information. It took me many years. One of the awesome aspects of today's technology is you can ask a question like this, get an answer immediately, and boom, you save yourself some years of stress. So the quality of what you eat doesn't determine whether you get to eat more or less. It just determines that you feel better with what you eat and you look better with what you eat. Cool. Okay, the second question. I know you get this a lot, but it's all over the gram. So Instagram, I guess, to the point where I know if I didn't have you, I would definitely dive in, but the good, the bad, and the ugly of carnivore versus keto versus paleo. So they want to know the good and the bad about those type of diets. Carnivore and paleo are pretty much the same. Paleo stands for Paleolithic diet. It's essentially, this is a crappy way of explaining it, but it's easy to understand, is how did cavemen eat back in the day? So in the Paleolithic era, how do they eat? And that's similar in structure to the carnivore diet, where the focus is on meats. It's going to be basically meats, fruits, and vegetables. And you're going to try to avoid grains, processed foods, and dairy. So meat, fruit, and vegetable. That would be a way of explaining paleo and carnivore, meat, fruit, and vegetables. Now, the ketogenic diet or the keto diet is referring to eating such a low amount of carbohydrates that the body actually starts to use dietary fats or fatty acids for energy. And when you break down fatty acids, it breaks it down into what's called ketones, and that's the keto part. So your body is using ketones for fuel rather than glucose. When you eat carbohydrates, your body breaks the carbohydrates down to glucose and then uses that as a fuel source. The idea of a keto diet is you don't eat enough carbohydrates, that there essentially isn't any glucose available to the body. The body then has to transition to using fatty acids for a fuel source, which is ketones. And that is supposedly set up to help you burn more body fat. And the reason why I kind of said that with a question mark at the end is it's not actually true. So let's talk a little bit about those things. Essentially, what we can think of them as is low carbohydrate, high protein, high fat diets. That's a very loose description, and I'm sure if anybody is a zealot for each of these diets, they're already mad at how I explain things. However, let's be a little bit open-minded and let me get through this. So one of the ways in which those diets can be helpful is if people are diabetic, pre-diabetic, if they have blood fasting glucose issues, insulin issues. If you don't consume a lot of carbohydrates, it helps to resensitize the body to carbohydrates, and then that improves blood markers related to carbohydrates. Again, very loose way of explaining that. Also, carbohydrates tend to be more palatable than fats and proteins. So people tend to overeat carbohydrates compared to fats and proteins. Fats and proteins are more satiating, meaning they make you feel more full. And it's kind of, you get quicker, like where if you're hungry, you eat fats and proteins, very quickly you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's enough. Whereas if it's something with carbohydrates, you like it, it tastes good, and then you end up eating 3 times more than you should have before you realized what you've been eating. So those are typical reasons why people would lean towards those type of diets. Is they're either looking for some type of insulin control, insulin sensitivity control, and or they have a hard time controlling carbohydrates. And then another one would be is like people just, if they have, we have differing genetic response to feeling full. Some people can eat more before they feel full than others. Some people have generally just a feeling of greater hunger throughout the day than other people. So a diet that is higher in fats and proteins tends to be more satiating, meaning you feel fuller from your meals for longer because fats and proteins take longer to digest than carbohydrates do. So there's a lot of reasons why people would choose those diets. One of the things I like to make clear is that it's not necessary if you don't want to. They have done an enormous amount of studies, and as much as we can ever know things based on studies in one moment of time, meaning in 20 years, who knows what we know today. But for what we can know today, in as much certainty as we can know it in today, is you can lose body fat and optimize aesthetics, like body composition, with any percentage variation of carbs, fats, and protein. Most notably, the difference between carbs and fats. We do know that there's a kind of an optimal range for protein, and if a diet is low in protein, below that range, you're not really going to optimize body composition. So if that is a goal of yours, is to look lean and muscular, then you do want to have a certain percentage of protein within your diet. That can be quite a large range. You can estimate it somewhere between 20 to 35% for most people. You can do it grams per pound of body weight, which would be anywhere from 0.6 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. There's an enormous range in there. Now, the low end of those ranges would be people who don't lift weights and they're not really worried about muscle mass. The higher end of those ranges would be people who lift weights and they are worried about muscle mass. So you can be anywhere in that range, and there's arguments, all within there. Then the remaining amount of calories can come from any percentage of carbs or fats that you desire. If the benefits of the carnivore, paleo, or keto style of eating favoring more fats, and then since they do include vegetables, it's going to include fiber, which is very filling as well. So if you include vegetables in the way you eat, you're going to get a filling effect from the carbohydrates that you eat, because vegetables are carbohydrates. So there's a lot of satiation component to those styles of dieting. So if that's something that interests you, freaking hell yeah, crush it, go with it, love it, enjoy it. However, if you're somebody who likes carbohydrates and you want to still include those in your diet, you absolutely can, just as much as you would need to control the volume of fats and protein that you eat, you would then need to control the volume of carbohydrates. So if you have trouble controlling carbohydrates, doing a diet that's lower in carbohydrates would make sense. However, if you can manage carbohydrate intake, proportionally and correctly, you enjoy carbohydrates and you can eat what you need and you don't feel like you're worried about overeating, then include them and that's totally fine. You think about people who, like bodybuilding. In the world of bodybuilding, it is way more common that they will have carbohydrates in their diet, much higher than the percentage of what keto would allow, which I believe is 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day. And then paleo and carnivore doesn't really have a percentage or an amount total intake. They just tend not to eat a lot of carbohydrates compared to a normal, quote unquote, American diet or more normal standard diet. So bodybuilders are the leanest and most muscular people on the planet, and they have carbohydrates on a regular basis. So you can certainly be lean, muscular, do all the things you want to do and have carbs. Really, it depends. What I find most common is the palatability and digestion. Meaning, what people tend to do best with is a combination of foods that they enjoy but are still considered relatively healthy, meaning they digest at the right rate. So we might enjoy candy, but I can't just eat candy all day because I'll feel like crap. I can control my body weight eating just candy all day, but I'm not going to have the best energy. I'm not going to have the best digestion quality. I'm not going to feel good if I eat really sugary, crappy foods all day. So foods that people like and foods that like them, meaning the body responds well to those foods. It digests the food well. It doesn't feel bloated, doesn't feel gassy. Sometimes when people eat really high fat content, they'll have digestive issues. Now you can take digestive enzymes like Zypan is something that's really helpful for breaking down high fatty content meals. So you can take digestive enzymes, probiotics, and do digestive aids to help that process. But the key is to find foods that you enjoy enough to be long-term consistent with those foods, and that digest well enough that you feel good when you eat those foods. And then whatever percentage of fat and carb ends up being, then so be it. These diet structures, when they're pre-named like this, like carnivore, paleo, keto, it's just a structure that you can then choose from. But if you don't like that structure entirely, you can modify it a little bit if you want. So for example, sometimes people with carnivore, they'll add dairy. They'll add Greek yogurt, they'll add cheese, when technically, maybe that doesn't fit into the definition of carnivore. It's kind of when I talk to people who are vegetarian, they tend to have there's like lacto-ovo vegetarian, there's ovo vegetarian, so some people will have no animal products at all. That would be like vegan. Some people are like, well, I'm vegetarian, but I eat chicken. So you don't just eat other meats. It's not really vegetarian if you also eat a meat. You just don't eat other meats. So it would be kind of however you want to define it. You can put whatever label on it if you want, or don't put a label on it. That's probably a lot easier because then you don't feel like you have to stick to something that isn't 100% whatever you want it to be. Just eat foods you enjoy, eat foods you can control, eat foods you can be consistent with, eat foods that digest well. Whatever the percentage of anything that ends up being is whatever it is. That tends to be the best approach. In general, when we think about carbs and fats, typically fats digest slower. So the energy you get from them isn't like a high amount of energy, it's just a low level sustained energy. And then carbs digest quicker, so you get an energy boost like sooner after that meal, but then that dissipates sooner after that meal as well. So people tend to favor carbohydrates when they're more active because they're eating the fuel and then they want to be able to use the fuel right away, so that would be carbohydrates. When they're less active and they're sitting on the butt, maybe not doing much, maybe doing computer work, maybe making a Q&A video, they can eat more fats, and fats are just that nice low-level sustained energy, and maybe that better matches the way in which they're using their energy. So that's how I kind of think of it when I think about choosing fats versus carbs is, how am I using my energy right now? Am I up and active and moving? Then I want to eat carbohydrates. If I'm sitting on my butt not doing much, I'll probably favor more fats. That isn't always the case, but that's a general rule of thumb that I use when approaching macronutrient selection at my meals. I do tend to keep a relatively low carbohydrate intake when I'm dieting. I find that I have a better just low level sustained energy. I do have a better low level sustained hunger when I focus more into high proteins, moderate fats, and low carbs. I tend to do best with that. However, I've tried every diet under the sun, so that way I would know how to do it with clients. And I have some clients, they'll eat, a high amount of carbs, maybe 60% of their calories from carbs, and they're dieting and they look great. That's just, it really is individual dependent. I don't feel like you have to predetermine anything other than just what your total calorie count's going to be, how much protein you should have within that calorie count. And then from there, you just pick based on whatever you need in the moment. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. Next question. If I want to drop body fat but maintain as much muscle as possible, how would I set up my diet? Ooh, fun one. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and it seems as though you talk a lot about the timing of foods and how that could be a way for me to maximize my muscle while dieting. But I was wondering what structure you would use if you had the same goal as me. Okay, there we go. So I'm actually dieting that way right now. I'm dieting to lose body fat, but I want to sustain as much muscle as possible. I have a really high protein intake. I am eating 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. To give you an idea of that, I weigh 255 pounds right now. So I am eating around 250 to 300 grams of protein a day. That's good for me. I like that. So you can do whatever you want from there. But that's what I would aim for, is around 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per day. My carbohydrates are very low at the moment. I don't actually track them. I track calories and protein, and then I just only have carbohydrates, like a direct carbohydrate source, before my workouts. And depending on how far ahead of my workout is, depends on what type of carbohydrate I eat. If I only have, maybe 15, let's say I'm eating right before my workout, roughly, 20 minutes or less before my workout, I'll actually have more like candy type stuff or very snacky, fast digesting carbs. So the other day I had Reese's Pieces. There you go. So it worked out well. My wife and I had to go to an appointment for something, and in their free candy dish they had some packets of Reese's Pieces, and I knew that as soon as we got back to the house I had to get my workout in before I had another appointment later in the day. So I was like, hey, let's steal some of these candy packs. So I had the Reese's Pieces when I got home and got a good workout in, and it was great. If I'm further ahead of the workout, I'll have rice cakes. Maybe I'll have white potato. Maybe I'll have jasmine rice. And then outside of my workouts, like the pre-workout meal, I really don't have a lot of carbs at all. I don't usually will choose a direct carb source. If I do, it's like an apple, just because I'm kind of hungry for it and I want it. The other meals, I will have fats like cheese, maybe avocado oil, mix that in with chicken, or if the avocado oil is for the chicken. Then for my Greek yogurt, I will have like Chobani Greek yogurt. I'll mix in my chocolate protein powder, and I like that as a little bit of a mix. Super high protein content there, a little bit of fat. But that is how I approach it, is I have carbohydrates before my workout, and then I try to avoid carbohydrates for the most part the rest of the day. I focus on proteins and fats at those other meals. That is how I would structure it. That's actually how I do structure it. Do you have to do it that way? Absolutely not. You can have more carbs later in the day if you'd like. I just find that my energy is sustained better. I have a little less like hunger cravings. If I don't have carbs, I guess the way of saying it is, when I do have carbs, sometimes I'll be like, holy crap, I've realized how hungry I am right now. So carbs tend to trigger hunger for me. Now, I like them before the workout because it gives me a good energy and I can have a kick-ass workout. But outside of the workout, I like to avoid the carbs, because if I focus on meals with just protein and fats, I'm not as hungry. Like, I'll eat it, get it in, and then I move on about my day. And then I do use no-calorie sweeteners for drinks throughout the day, like Skittle packets. They have like no-calorie flavor packets I'll put in with water. I also do use energy drinks, calorie-free energy drinks. And those are like little things that give me like a sweet flavor if I want one. I'll also chew on some sugar-free gum from time to time. So I do have like little tricks and things I do if I were to want like a sweet treat, but I don't want to have a high carbohydrate intake food at that time. So there you go. Okay. Next question we have is these ones, actually 3 training questions. Is this person asked about training stuff that is focused for a volleyball player. My 14-year-old daughter plays travel, so travel volleyball. Exercises to help with jump height, stronger serve, etc. Okay, to get better at jumping, jump. I know that's a smart-ass answer. Any version of jumping whatsoever, and then the more variety, the better. You can do onto like just basically standing vertical jumps. You can do like single jumps with short time rests in between. So maybe they jump, they land, and they stay in place for like 5 seconds, then they jump, they land, stay in place for 5 seconds. You can also have what's called rebounding jumps. There's a bunch of terminology for all this. So the terminology might not match exactly the way you would say it, but this is the way that I would say it. Is rebounding jumps is you jump, the second you land, you want to absorb that force and go right into the next jump. So continuous jumps. So maybe like 1, 2, 3, and then you would take a break. What tends to help with jumping is to keep them low reps, really explosive effort. If you do too many reps at a time, you're actually more so then going to work on like muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance. You're not working on explosivity. So explosivity, when you're thinking of jump height, is a singular, just max effort, pow of force. So you want to make sure that when you're doing jump training, that it stays around that type of feel. So if you do multiple reps, you don't do multiple reps very much. Like I usually will do 5 reps or less in a row. And that can be continuous jumps just from the ground. It can also be box jumps. So maybe you jump up to a box, step down, jump up to a box, step down. You can also just do where you jump to the box, then come down and land, almost like you jump down, but you don't gain height off the box. You just fall onto your feet. So those are like bounding jumps, like back and forth, back and forth. You can also do depth jumps where you step off of a box. Maybe you go down, it can be any height. You can make it, whatever you want. It could be 4 inches up to 24 inches. Some people will even do higher, but you got to work your way up to that so you don't blow out your connective tissue. So you can do depth jumps where you step off of a height, you hit the ground, and then boom, spring into the jump. You can also play with variations of vertical jumps versus bounds, which is a jump for distance rather than jump for height. You can do those back to back. One of the ways I like having people do it is do a vertical jump, and then as they land, they swing their arms and load their hips and then do a bound, which is a distance jump. You can also do a bound into a vertical jump. You can do single leg jumps, you can do double leg jumps, you can do step into jumps, you can do standing static jumps. The more variety, the better. One of the easiest ways to do it is jump variations. Just search that term, jump variations on YouTube, and you'll get more than you'll ever need to know. But the best way to get better at jumping is to jump. And then if we look at a stronger serve, that would be actually similar to baseball, like a throwing. I've worked with throwers for shot put, and I've actually worked with Major League Baseball pitchers. And the majority of what you're looking for when you're working on throwing strength, and a serve would be essentially the similar action to a throw, but instead of having something in your hand, you're smacking your hand against something. You're going to look at making sure that they have good, healthy, full range of motion mobility in their shoulder. You're going to want to work on core rotation and anti-rotation. So any kind of abdominal exercises that involve rotating and that involve prevention of rotation. That's a really weird term, but those are great exercises, absolutely great exercises for throwing strength or serving strength, is rotation and anti-rotation. And then for a serve, it's not going to matter as much, or a spike, it's not going to matter as much for lower body because you're not planting into the ground to create the rotation. However, for a pitcher or throwing person or fighter, like I work with MMA people, you're going to have a foot kind of like planted into the ground when you're creating that action. So you do want to work on lower body explosiveness. And that can be done with like split jumps, single jumps, split squats, single leg squats, regular basic squats, regular basic deadlifts, any type of explosive type of lifting with the lower body. You can do bounds, like side to side, lateral bounds. There's a lot of things you can do. But that's in general what I would train if I were training a volleyball athlete or a throwing type athlete, is do lots of jumping variations, do lower body strength, like static strength, and then do lower body dynamic strength. Work on core rotation and anti-rotation. And then for the upper body, make sure they have full, healthy range of motion for their shoulders. And then work on what would be considered thoracic strength. So strengthening of the lower and middle trapezius muscle and the rhomboids and rotator cuffs. So if you work on all those things connected, you're going to make one hell of a volleyball player and a throwing athlete, whether that's throwing a ball, throwing a fist, whatever it might be. Even think of like tennis, if you're just like swinging a tennis racket, or a baseball player swinging the bat to get a hit. These would all be areas that we would focus on in training. Next, I'm getting ready for a beach trip in 6 weeks. Woot woot. I want to lose fat as fast as possible. Hopefully you started before 6 weeks, but we can still help you even if you haven't. Okay, I currently do weights and cardio. Okay, good. I'm glad you did start. In the past, I would have switched to just cardio, but in the past, I never looked the way I wanted. I would still always look soft. What am I doing wrong? Okay. How much cardio is too much cardio? How should I train for the next 6 weeks, starting on Monday, May 5th? Okay, awesome. So essentially, they want to lose fat as fast as possible. The first thing I would do is the nutrition. Absolutely, use the nutrition stuff we talked about in that question about I want to drop body fat but maintain muscle. So you're going to look to have sufficient amount of protein, time your carbohydrates before your activities, and then you're going to want to control overall calories very well. And if you're looking for fat loss, you're going to push into a deficit. How much into the deficit really depends on your history of dieting and what you currently eat. I have no clue what you currently eat. One way to figure that out is to search online for BMR calculator. There's a website called calculator.net, and they have a BMR calculator. If you go to that website, you put in your age, gender, weight, and then if you have an idea of what your body fat percentage is, you can choose that as an option as well. It'll then tell you what your BMR is. Your BMR is your basal metabolic rate. That's how many calories you burn doing nothing. If you were to just lay in bed with your eyes closed, that's how many calories your organs need and your body needs to just stay alive. And then anything above the BMR is calories you use to be active and move around with. I would typically, if you're going to try to lose fat as fast as possible, eat around your BMR. You're going to feel like crap some days, so maybe you need to go a little bit above that. But your BMR would be what I would consider to be the floor of what you want to eat, and then you eat a little bit above that as needed per day based on cravings, hunger, and energy and recovery. So that's an idea of having what to eat and how to eat. Then training wise, you still want to lift weights. If you don't lift weights, you're not reinforcing why the body has muscle, so it will actually start to lose muscle mass. And that is possibly why in the past they said when they just switched to a lot of cardio to lose fat, they would feel soft, because as you were losing fat, you were also losing muscle. So you want to maintain weight training so that way you can maintain your muscle mass. And then really the cardio part, like, it doesn't matter whether you do it in a training session, it doesn't matter whether you do it outside of training. If you're eating around your BMR and you're lifting weights, you're going to cause fat loss and you're going to hopefully sustain muscle tissue. And assuming your protein count is around 1 gram per pound of body weight, you're going to maintain muscle mass by lifting weights and eating protein. And then being active can help. But if you're already eating at your BMR, the active part, like the cardio part or your step count or things like that, have the least amount of an effect out of all the components. So the first thing would be is getting your diet correct. The right amount of calories, the right amount of protein to promote fat loss. Then weight training. I would weight train at least 2 times a week, but you can do more, that would be okay. And you want to push kind of sort of close to failure, but don't overexert yourself, don't put yourself at risk. You don't have to go all the way into muscular failure, but get to where the muscles say, holy crap, that was pretty damn hard. I didn't really enjoy that. So that way the body still feels that the muscle mass you have is necessary. And then cardio and or step count activity from there, it's up to you. You know, if you feel like crap that day, but you're holding your diet right, you lifted weights, you don't have to do any cardio. However, if you're struggling with your diet and you're like, oh man, I ate like 500 calories over what I should have today, we'll do a little bit of cardio, maybe to burn off some of that little extra that you ate. It's trying to find the balance of how much movement you can sustain on a daily basis that doesn't cause massive cravings and overeating on your diet. There you go. Next question. How often should I train my glutes if I want to prioritize them? But how can I do that without making my legs too thick? I used to play softball in college and my legs have always been thick, but not my glutes. How can I get just my glutes to grow? A lot of glute isolation work, and anything you can find that isolates the glutes, do that heavy. And then for things that still involve your thighs, do those lighter for more reps or more explosive style movement. What does all that mean? If you can do barbell hip thrusts or a machine hip thrust, those are going to be a good option for isolative glute work, and you can do that really heavy. You can also do machine abductors, where you push the knees out. You can do that very heavy as well. You can do, depending on what maxes you have for equipment, like if you have a machine kickback, it's more glute isolative, then do that really heavy. Anything that is mostly just the glutes doing the work, do that as heavy as you can. Then, when you're doing things like step-ups, lunges, split squats, regular squats, you want to do those with more moderate weight load, explosive effort, higher reps, and that way, since the quads are involved in those movements, the quads aren't as likely to grow, but you're still going to get the glute work. So I would do glute isolation stuff first, do it really heavy, pre-exhaust the glutes, get them absolutely beat up, super fatigued, super tired, and then when you move into things that involve the glutes but along with the quads, so step-ups, lunges, squats, things like that, leg press, then you can do those. You can do those moderate heavy, but likely now that the glutes are already exhausted and dead from the heavier stuff, they're going to fail first in those other movements. This is actually what I recommend a lot, like for men, if they have trouble growing their chest. One of the best ways to make up for that or account for that is to do chest isolation work before their presses. So have them do a lot of chest flies before they do chest presses. And that way, when they do the presses, their chest is the most fatigued thing, so it gets the most stimulation from the presses. You want to use that same theory, but for your glutes. So train your glutes in isolation, super heavy, super hard, super intense. And then whenever you do things that are just lower body in general, like compound multi-muscle, multi-joint movements, you would then have the glutes already so pre-fatigued that hopefully they'll fail before anything else does, specifically your quadriceps. And then that will create more glute growth and you won't get as much quadricep growth. Super fun question there. Okay, next we have is business. We have one business question. So anybody, if you ever want to include business, whether that's gym owner, personal trainer, anything to do with training, personal training, I want you to always feel welcome to include that into our video content and Q&A content. I like business education. I love it a lot. It's one of the things I do for consultations, and I work with other gyms to provide online coaching for them. So I love business. So throw out any business questions you want at any time. I see on TikTok and Instagram that trainers use before and after photos to help prove themselves, in quotes. Should I do that with my clients? Most of my clients don't want to put in the effort to get six-pack abs, and for many of them, that isn't their goal. So their before and after photos wouldn't be eye-catching, quote unquote. Should I still use them? If not, how would you advertise yourself to prove yourself without using photos? I do not use a lot of before and after photos. Actually, other than my wife, I don't think I do use them. And it's mostly for that reason is, one, people don't like taking before photos. They don't feel good about themselves, and they don't want to then see the proof of that or have, the miserableness of having to confront and accept where they are. Are there benefits to before and after photos? Hell yes, there are. And it can be super motivating for a lot of people. But there's also a lot of people who that is not motivating. The thought of them having to take a before photo is alone a reason why they wouldn't sign up for a trainer or sign up for nutrition help, because they're like, I will not take that photo. That's ridiculous. I do not want to look at myself in a bikini. I do not want to look at myself in my underwear. I'm never going to do that. So then they just never even do it, and it's like, oh, that would be awful if they didn't get help just because they didn't want to take a photo. Before and after photos, if someone finds that motivational, so you can ask them, and if they find that motivational, then hell yeah, do it. And if they get a good enough transition to where if you were to look at the before and after and say, wow, I can see that this person made great progress, then go ahead and use those photos, post them. Obviously ask the person's permission. You can black out their face or cut off their face in the photos if you want. So just make sure they're aware you're doing that. And I would ask the client. If the client doesn't want to do it, then sure as hell do not do it. You do not have to use before and after photos to motivate people or to prove yourself as a trainer. One of the ways I like to do it is just share educational content. So I share content every single day on just information, things that maybe people don't know that now that they know, they like, holy crap, I really need to know that. I didn't even know that existed. That was amazing. One of my favorite quotes is, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. So I'll say that again. You don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. What I mean by that, and what I like about that quote is, there are so many things in life that we're unaware of, that once we become aware, they can make a huge positive impact in our life. So I like sharing information because maybe somebody will say, holy crap, I didn't know that. But now that I know that, that would help me a lot. Then they get the help from that information. Great. Another benefit is they might say, wow, I wonder what else this person knows that I don't know. So maybe I should reach out to them and get them to help me. So that's a way to promote yourself in business, is to share information. What information do you share? Often the best information is to share things that are personal for you. So what has helped you in your journey? What have you found interesting and amazing and insightful and has made a big difference in your life? And then also, if you have clients, use your clients' examples and experiences. So if you have a client named Sally, say, wow, what along Sally's journey, what has made the biggest difference for her? Let me make content based on that information. So sharing content is great. Then for yourself, if you share effort, or maybe you have a video of a client really pushing themselves super hard, you can share that as a way of saying man, look how awesome and hard this person is working. That's so motivational. That's motivation, inspiration. I think there's a term for that, but I forget what it is. Fitspiration or something. So just use things that are like exciting and motivating. You can use people doing PRs. Doesn't mean they have to lift 1,000,000 pounds. But if, client Sally went from 20-pound dumbbells to 25-pound dumbbells for chest presses, take a little video of that, or take a picture of her holding a 25-pound dumbbell and say, yay, Sally, hit a new PR today. Like, celebrate the shit out of people doing stuff that's awesome, even if it's not a before and after photo. Even if they send you a message and they're like, wow, I feel so much better today. I have such better energy because of the food changes we've been making. Screenshot that and share that. That's a great way of kind of promoting yourself. And you'll often get a lot more of those than you would a before and after photo. I personally like sharing that information more because I think it resonates with more people. There are people who don't give a crap about any of that. They just want the result. They're like, I will do whatever the hell it takes. I don't care if I'm happy along the way. I don't care if I feel good about myself. I just want to freaking look like this, or I want to be able to perform this. I want to lift this. Those people, awesome. Gotta love it, So post PRs, post before and after photos, post what you can that relates to that crowd. But then the crowd that maybe isn't into the before and after photos, that isn't trying to lift 1,000,000 pounds, post things that are related to them, that are motivational to them, that they express are things that are making them happy in the process that you're going through. That would be a good way to not feel forced or that before and after photos are necessary in order to make a successful business. You can be successful in personal training by just simply sharing the successes of your clients, whatever those successes may look like for each client. Okay. So there we go. I think that was pretty fun. We ended up having pretty balanced 3 nutrition questions, 3 training questions, a business question, and then I answered quite a few questions this week in private messages because they were more personal than they would have been useful in a Q&A. You're still welcome to ask those questions all the time. I truly, truly, truly want the Patreon service to be just an open format. Ask anything you want, whenever you want, and I'll get you the information you need. There you go. Okay, well, if you need anything at all, you can reach out. Our website is www.c3method.com, and again, that's 3 spelled out, T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. You can find us, C3 Method, on Instagram, on YouTube, everywhere under the sun. That's the goal, is hopefully we're everywhere and anywhere. If you like these Q&As, please participate in the Patreon service so that we can get your questions answered. You can also subscribe and or follow us on social media platforms, specifically YouTube and Instagram, to help grow the reach of our business. And then also we have the C3 Method podcast with Robert Polenic. I post 3 episodes a week, so make sure you're checking that out on YouTube and most popular podcast platforms. I've been covering a lot more nutrition lately because that's a lot more questions than I've been getting, but I usually will kind of shift through nutrition, training, mindset topics, and then include things like this Q&A as well. If you need anything at all, just let me know, c3method.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.